Hello everyone, today we covered the lesson on measurement. Now before we talk about measurement, let's remember what we covered last time. We said that sometimes in a language program we want to evaluate some of the components of the curriculum and then make decisions about it. This is evaluation, a process of making decisions in order to improve something. Now, because decisions are very important, we need to take them seriously and we need to collect information that help us make that decision. And for that purpose, we use assessment. Assessment consists in measuring the features that we're interested in by collecting information from opinions, observations, etc. And sometimes, when it comes to measuring people's knowledge, ability, or performance, we may want to administer a test because a test is the only thing that can measure a person's competence, a person's performance. Now, let's go to measurement then. Measurement is a very interesting concept because it is going to guide everything that we're going to do. We cannot make decisions in an arbitrary way before we make any kind of decision about anybody or anything in our program. We need to make sure that we have the correct information. So there are three important elements of measurement. First of all, the characteristics, and this has to do with the thing that we want to measure. The question is, what is the thing that we want to measure? The second element is quantification, and in this step we ask ourselves what units or scales we're going to use in order to measure the characteristic. The last element concerns the rules and procedures because we need to make sure that we use the right instruments, that we take the right steps, and that we interpret our results in the most accurate and precise way. Let's illustrate this with an example. Imagine that we want to carry out a teacher evaluation to make decisions about what teachers should be promoted or which ones need to take some extra training or courses. In this case, we need to assess teaching competence. This is the characteristic that we want to measure. And then if we think about it, teaching competence is made up of different elements. First of all, mastery of the target language. This means that to be competent, a teacher must have a good level of the target language that he or she is going to teach. The second element will be the mastery of the subject matter. So this means that the teacher should be very knowledgeable about the course that he or she is teaching. Number 3, we can also include the mastery of language teaching methodology, which means that a competent teacher should be trained, very well trained, in the management of the different approaches, methods, and techniques for teaching the course that he or she is teaching. And we can also include mastery of information technology and materials. Because, of course, to make the class more interesting and meaningful, the teacher has to be able to learn to design and use a number of materials and technology. Another aspect to consider in teaching competence is classroom management. As we mentioned before, this refers to being able to organize all of the things that happen in the classroom and to be able to solve any problems that may arise. Last but certainly not least, ethical behavior. A competent teacher is also somebody who is punctual, who is responsible, who is organized, and who respects the students as individuals. Now, it is very important to say that each of the components of teaching competence can be further divided. For example, mastery of the target language may include the level of language proficiency, but also the adaptation of language used to the student's level. And in the same way, ethical behavior can be divided into different elements such as punctuality and regular attendance to the class, responsibility and organization for the planning, and respect and concern for the students, among others. Once we have established the characteristics of teaching competence, the second element of measurement is quantification. Now imagine that we're going to design an instrument for assessing teaching competence, and we have questions concerning the different characteristics, for example, one related to the student's level of English. The question is as follows: El nivel de inglés de tu profesor es. And then of course, what we need to do now is to add a scale to quantify this characteristic. We need to have answers, and the answers have to tell us the extent to which the level of English of the teacher is excellent or is very bad. So we need a scale. Now, because we want our scale to be valid and reliable, we need to make sure that we include appropriate units of measurement. For example, if in our instruments we include the words malo y deficiente, the problem is that these two terms are somewhat synonym, and therefore this does not allow to have a precise measure of the level of proficiency that the teacher has. So, a scale of this kind will be like that. Malo and deficiente are very, very similar, so we don't know the difference between deficiente and malo, and therefore we have a problem here that there is very small distance between the first and the second unit, but there's a long distance between the second and the third. So we need to be very precise. In this case, the scale can be solved by using pésimo, which means extremely bad. And in this case, if you see, we have units that are very precise and accurate, and that can allow us to measure the characteristic in a reliable and accurate way. Pésimo, and then malo, and then regular, which is the middle point, then bueno, and then excelente. Now, to see the importance of measurement scales in assessment instruments, you're going to do a little activity on Classroom. So turn to Classroom and solve the activity. Thanks a lot for your attention.